Okay, now we're recording. That's okay, didn't miss much. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, and then we'll get into the demo in a minute. These are the topics we're going to review today. I'm actually gonna demo them. I've broken them up into like groupings. So after each group, we'll have a Q&A. And there's probably 6 groups here. So if you could hold your questions until I get to the end of that section, then we'll open it up for Q&A, and then we'll move on to the next section. Okay, I'm not going to read these to you. You have the handout for this, but these are topics that we're going to look at in CMS.
Do you want them also maybe put it in chat?
Huh?
You want to also put some of your questions in chat, and then you'll at the end of.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Jerry just suggested that if you have any questions that we don't address when we get to that section, just put it in chat, and then we'll see if we could address it at the end. Okay. These are the advanced topics, treasury topics that we're not going to cover, but we had training on each and every one of these, and we recorded it, and there's handouts. So if you just go out to the CMS community website, you'll be able to see all the training videos. So if you want to learn more about any of these topics, all you need to do is go to the CMS support community website and go to training, and you'll be able to do that. Okay. Tip of the day, I'm going to go over that at the very end, but I found something that might help you, might not help you, who knows, but we'll talk about that later on. That's really not that important. Let's get into the demo. Okay, Jerry, how do I get rid of this? Just minimize that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me bring that down here, problem. Get it out of my way. Okay, so we're going to start off with a CMS demo, and I'm playing Treasure. This is the St. Joseph's conference. It is the test system, not the test conference. This is a very old data. It goes back to 2020. So unfortunately, I'm not going to show you anything with 2021, 2022, but it really doesn't matter. For demonstration purposes, I think it will be just fine. Okay, so if you're a new treasurer, this is what we call your home page, if you will. And as you know, CMS is a roles-based system, which means depending upon the role that you have or roles that you have, you get to see or not see certain functions with CMS and within CMS. So if you have a treasury role, you will see these 2 menu options: the check request and the check register. Obviously, if you have a caseworker role, case manager role, you're going to see more. But these are the 2 bare minimum options you will see if you have a treasury role. So if you don't see these on your screen, then you need to go to your conference administrator and have him or her assign you these roles as a treasurer. Okay, so kind of like just do a tour of this home screen before we get into some of the meat. This is your message box, better known as notifications. So anytime that a caseworker submits a request for a check or for a pledge, you're going to get an email and you're going to get a message in this message box. Okay, so you're going to get notified 2 ways. So you can see your messages here, and I'm going to show you how you can click on these 2 and get directly to that pledge or get directly to that check request. But that's what this is. If a new vendor gets set up by the caseworker, you're going to see a message in the message box saying a new vendor was set up. So keep an eye on this message box. There are settings at the conference level that determines how long these messages stay there before they get deleted. You don't control that. That's at the conference level. Okay. This is the task pane. There are some reports here that might be very interesting to you from a treasury standpoint, but we're really not going to touch on those. But I'm going to come down to the main menu here, and we're going to get right into it. So what I have done is I've already pre-staged a couple of a check requests, I think, and some other things, pretending that the caseworker has just submitted you request. And once again, that request could be a check request, it could be a pledge request, or it could be a request that was a pledge that they turned into a check. So you got a notification. You got notifications in your message box, and you got notified through email. Two ways you can get to it. One way is that you could just click on the message in the message box, and you can go to your check approval screen. That's one way, and you're right there. Because what you do next is approve checks, right? The other way, and most treasurers, the ones that I've talked to, use this technique. They just go to their check request queue, if you will, and they see what's been assigned to them, what's been requested to them from the caseworker, and then they start working the list. And that's what we're going to do, is work this list. So there's three types of requests that you'll receive, as I said. One is a check request, one is a pledge for you to approve, and three is a pledge that got converted into check request. Do I hear somebody asking a question?
I think there's just background noise, and what you could do is just mute everybody if you want, John.
Right there.
Go into participants, I think. Do it that way and mute all. See where it says mute all? Just
Got
go
it.
ahead and mute all.
But it doesn't mute me, right?
Yeah. Right,
Yeah.
doesn't mute you.
Okay.
And they could always unmute themselves,
Okay.
but for now,
Just close it.
yeah, you just close it.
Okay. So we had some background noise. We just muted everybody. So we're going to work this list. I'm a treasurer. I just received 3 requests. One of them is a check request. That's probably the most typical. It could be for utilities, it could be for rent, it could be for transportation, it could be for prescription items. Who knows what it's for? In this case, it's for utilities. So this is the check approval screen. Okay, and this is where you approve the check request or you deny the check request. You have many options here. I'm going to go over them. So let's kind of like just look at the screen itself. The areas that are open to you right now is where you put in a check number, which is required. If you've been on CMS long enough, you know anything with a red asterisk means it's a required field. So check number is required. And by the way, check number must be unique. And when I mean unique, not just unique for the month, unique for forever. If you try to use that same check number that you used maybe in 2020, you'll get an error. And then mailed or delivered, as you can see, it's checked as well. So down here is your assistance categories, account holder name. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And here's your vendor information. If you're not familiar with accordions, this is a technique that we use throughout CMS because we can't fit all the information on one screen. You could expand that accordion for the client information, and then you can contract it by going back to the vendor. So if you needed to see the client information, you could see it, but the vendor is typically displayed. So let's look at the buttons first. You go back to your check request screen if you needed to. Let's see. You could go to your check register, which I just showed you. You can review the case, and this is something that I think a fairly amount of our treasurers do. Before they approve a check, they want to learn something about the case. So they go to review case, and typically they'll go to the situation tab and learn something about the case before they approve the check. Some don't, they just approve the check, but some want to know more about it, and they can, how many household members there are, But mostly it's the situation that they're interested in learning about. You can change the type. Now that type is this financial report type. If the caseworker mistakenly chose an incorrect financial reporting type, you can change that. And why is that important? That's what it's going to appear on your monthly financial report. So you have the ability to change that if for some reason they just selected the wrong thing. Maybe they selected temporary lodging instead of housing. It's a
So
common
that can be
mistake.
changed?
That can be changed.
I mean, there's no drop down or anything. Oh,
There
so
is when you
change
go
type.
there.
Ah,
Okay. So you can change that. The treasurer can change this. Okay. Now, this is a utility check request. So what's really important, this came from the caseworker, by the way, and I was the caseworker. So the account number is extremely important. The caseworker needs to make sure they put the account number in the account number field, which is optional when they submit the check request. And the reason is because, especially with utilities, when you send that check to the utility company, they post it by account number. That's what they're looking for. So if you're receiving check requests without account numbers, that's not a good thing, specifically with utilities. You'd probably get away with it with rent. Now, normally we put the apartment number there. That's what we put in the field. But with utilities, you're not going to get away with it. That check probably will not get posted, or if it gets posted to the wrong account. The other critical field is the account holder name. Many times, and especially with utilities, that the client and the account holder are two different people. And the reason for that usually is because the client has credit problems and somebody else co-signed for them and put that service in their name. So when you send that check to that utility company, let's say it's Myriad Power, they're not going to know Mary Jo King. They're going to know Mary Jones, because that is the person who is the account holder with that account number. That's the other important piece of information. Again, this all comes from your caseworker. They are the ones that complete this information. Okay, that's very critical information when you're paying a check. You want to make sure you have all of that before you go ahead and you just approve the check. Okay, I was going back up here. I showed you review case. You could change the type, the financial type. Now you can approve a check or you can deny it. Now, here are some options that you have. This check request came through for $250. I, as the treasurer, can deny this request just by clicking deny. Now, what does that mean? That means that if the caseworker opened up that case and they looked at on their assistance tab, the status would say deny. And then, of course, a conversation would pursue between the caseworker and the treasurer saying, why did you deny my request? And who knows, there might be valid reasons. It might be that they went over the limit of the conference limit for that specific category. Don't know. But you have that ability to deny it. You also have the capability to change the amount. So if 250 is not all you can't afford that much based upon the funds that you have, and the best you can do is 150, you can change it to 150 if you want. Or you can just go ahead and approve it as is. And that's what we're going to do here. So like I said, check number is required. Now, if this is an electric bill, and I sent a note to my treasurer, and by the way, the caseworker does that in the other field when they're filling out the request, the check request. And I said, Make a debit card payment, and this is a way for me to show you how to make a debit card payment. Certainly, check number, you just put in the check number that you're physically writing the check. That's pretty easy. But if you're making an electronic payment, in this case, a debit card payment, I wanted to tell the treasurer this is pretty critical. So don't write the check. I want you to make a debit card payment so that it gets posted immediately because the client has been disconnected. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Like I said, check number is required. And what you would put in there, if you wanted to do it according to CMS rules, the check number you put in there for a debit card payment, a credit card payment, an ACH payment, whatever, you could put in debit transaction, just like that, debit space transaction. And if you had a second one, it doesn't look for duplicates. So you could have as many debit transaction check numbers in your register as you want. It will ignore the duplicate check. That's one way of doing it. Another way is what I've seen conference treasurers do, make up their own scheme. Some of them, and one that I think I've seen used quite a bit, is they'll preface the check number, say DC-11 2022-1, because they might have two within the month. And you can do whatever you want to do, but once again, it must be unique. The only time the uniqueness is ignored is when you use the word debit transaction. Okay? And then
May I pause for a second?
you may.
There are two people who posted in the chat room, and so I just posted a message asking you to send them directly to me. I have my laptop up and I'll be able to get those questions over to John. We can't access them while the presentation's going on and he's talking. I don't want to disrupt that flow.
Oh, that's right.
So there are two people, if you want to send those directly to Jennifer Maxwell that's logged in, you can do that and I'll share it with John. Sorry.
John, one of the things that we've done before too with debit transactions
Yeah, love
is
it.
that when you do a debit transaction,
Yeah,
you'll get a transaction number.
that's the other thing too.
Yeah.
I was just about ready to say that.
Okay.
And that way there you can tie it to the bank statement.
Right.
Mhm.
That's the beauty of it. So the third way, and Jerry just brought it up, he kind of like read my mind, is you could put in the confirmation number that you get back. Let's say this went to Marietta Power. Said it was going to Marietta Power. You'll get back a confirmation number. You can enter in that confirmation number. And the beauty of that is when you get your bank statement and they list the debits, you could tie it back to that confirmation number. Now, sometimes that confirmation number is very long. And so treasurers don't like doing that. And I've seen them kind of abbreviate it like to the last five or last six.
Last 5 or 6
Yeah,
digits.
something like that. But that is the preferred way, because then you'd be able to tie that transaction right back to your bank statement. That is absolutely the preferred method. Some like it, some don't. But the beauty of it, you get to pick and choose. CMS will take anything as long as it's not a duplicate. That's the point. Okay?
Here's your question. Is there a way to change the assistance resource? Say the caseworker types in rent and it's really for utilities. Can the treasurer do that?
No.
But if you change the category,
I don't think you can change the type. You can't change the resource. You can change the type only. I don't think so. So if you change that from you change the type from utilities to rent, then you're going to get a probably different resource selection. But you're not going to be able to change it from electric to natural gas. You know what I'm saying?
So then how would that happen? If the treasurer needed to change it, or why, I guess the question would be why? Why
Yeah.
or when or what?
Why would you need to change it?
Anne Marie, you want to unmute yourself and you could clarify. This is Anne Marie with Prince of Peace.
Hi, so this just came up this morning. It was the financial type is housing, which is fine, but it's actually temporary housing and not rent. So the caseworker put it in as rent, and I really want to track the temporary housing. So I noticed it afterwards, after I had just approved it. I had already known about the case, so I just kind of missed it. So I went back in to change type, hoping that I could then also change the assistance resource, and I couldn't. So I was,
Right.
there's another way.
Sorry, I wasn't specific. You did say that in your chat.
Yeah, I need to think about that, where else be able to perform that magic. You can't do it here, as you found out, Anne Marie.
Right.
You can't just change the type and change and think that you'd be able to change the resource. You can change the type and that's it. I have to think about where else, maybe when I get over to check register, let me look around there, okay? Why don't you hold that one? Good question though, very good.
This is a good question, because it's really important since we're getting
Get into
so
the
many.
right category.
Well, not only that, but temporary lodging has become such a larger and larger percentage of our assistance.
Yeah.
And we really want to denote it when we talk to
Well,
individuals.
there
And
is,
so it is very important because, a lot of caseworkers, I just put it down as rent. When truly what you're doing is you're helping a homeless demographic, and you really want to call that out because that's becoming more and more important. So, but no, good point. We probably need to communicate.
but
that
there
out.
is a way. I just thought of it. You're probably not gonna like the way, but there is a way. Okay, what I would have done is void that out and then have the caseworker resubmit it with the right resource.
Okay.
Now, she approved it. So after she approved it, she could void it.
Of course.
Okay.
If it's not closed.
No, it's in the open month. You just go, right? Anne Marie, are you still there with me?
Correct. It just happened this morning. So
Yeah,
it's-
just go in there and void it out and ask the caseworker to resubmit it with the right resource.
okay, but the check number will I still be able to use the same check number?
No, but I'm going to show you a little trick. What you normally do in that case, let's say that check number was 100. When you get the new request, you put 100 dash with a suffix at the end, like a small a, so that when you get the bank statement, it'll be 100 and you'll know how to tie that together.
Okay.
That's what you should really do. And I'll talk about that. There's other situations where you use that syntax. And that's the way that you would do it. But no, you couldn't use that same number, but you could use, a suffix at the end that will make it unique.
Yeah, I've done the suffix if it's one check to one person, but 3 different.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
There's other uses, other use of that kind of syntax, but that's one way you can do it. Okay, so we're going to do check number. I don't know. I'm going to pick it. I'm just going to make it up. And just to get by this so that we can move on. Now, this is mail or delivered. Unfortunately, we do not have one that says electronic. We should. And it's been discussed many times, especially now more and more conferences are going to electronic payments, but we don't. So you need to pick one. And the one that I normally pick is delivered. Okay. And then you key in a date, pick a date. And here's where you might want to say electronic payment or debit card payment.
EFT or.
Yeah. Card payment. Okay. So that is all that's required at this point for you to approve a check. The check number, the mail or deliver, put in the date and put in delivered to, and you're off. But once again, as a treasurer, you just don't want to come here and start approving checks without looking around like Anne Marie did. And she noticed that the assistant resource was incorrect. You really want to look at all the information, especially the information that the caseworker passed you in terms of the account number and the account holder, because you're going to write that physical check. You want to make sure you get the right information on it or it won't get posted correctly. Okay, so all we're going to do is just approve this.
I'm gonna move so that the camera focuses on you, John, because you're
Yes.
focused on me.
Okay, now I'm gonna go back to my check request work list.
Sorry, Jerry.
That one is gone.
I don't think they could see us anyway.
Well, I'm
It should be in the process right there. I processed it. By the way, you got two tabs here. You got the unprocessed requests that came to you and the processed ones. So now that one's been processed. So then we keep working our list, okay? Just by show of hands, can we find out how many conferences out there use pledges? Because I don't want to spend much time on pledges because we did a whole session on pledges. Is there,
only 3 people have their cameras on.
St. Jude does.
okay,
St. Jude uses pledges.
okay, cool. Then I'll spend some time on it. So the other type of request that you can receive is a pledge request. So the caseworker actually submits this request like they do a check request, but it's a pledge. But they can't do anything with it until you, the treasurer, approves it. They cannot turn that check, that pledge into a check until you approve it. So it comes to you as a pledge request. And once again, you have the same options as you had before. You could deny the pledge, or you could just approve it. Now, that changes the status of that pledge. So now it's open to the caseworker to go ahead when the client, typically the pledge is outstanding because the caseworker is waiting for the client to actually raise their share of the rent. There was some deal that was made. We'll pay 500 if you pay 500. So it's sitting out there until the client calls and says, I got my 500. That's when the caseworker then turns that check, that pledge into a check request. And that's what you're seeing as the third type of request that you will receive. Pledge/check. And this, when it opens up, it will be just like a check request, no difference. Okay? And once again, you'll see here, the pledge was for $10. I'm sorry, $200 was the pledge, $10 was the client's share of it. Check number, you got the same capabilities you had on a check request. You could deny it, you could approve it, you could do everything that you did before. You put in a check number. Put in date. I know, put
I
the,
just turned,
Yeah.
I just turned into.
put the year on.
It was at
Okay.
82. It
Wow.
was at 82.
Okay.
I turned it down to 70.
And that has been approved too. So if you go back to your check request, we worked all the requests that were sent to us. And here was one place where I was going to stop and ask for questions before I move on to the next section, which is going to be the check register. And that's the heart of, that's where the treasurers live, is between the check request and the check register. So any other questions on approving check, on approving requests?
I do have a question. In the previous page, you showed target. I always thought target was the total amount owed, not the client's part of it, because, you know, for instance, if we're paying rent and we say, look, we can pledge $500 towards your rent is $1,500. That we put down what the target is, which is $1,500,
Yeah.
of which we commit to 500 for it. I thought that's the reason. I thought that's what what you indicate is how much your total request was, and this is what you can this is what you can commit to
Yeah.
towards that total request.
And I guess the answer is you could do anything you like, you know, you can make a, you know, if St. Jude says, no, listen, the St. Jude says, listen, it is the total request. It's not just what the client can raise, because we got to see that whatever it is, plus what we're committing to pays it all off. Right?
Right, what's the
That's
total amount?
what's the total amount. What we do is in the situation, when we're talking to clients, we say, how much do you owe? And they say, I owe $2,000. And so in this situation, we say, client owes $2,000 for rent.
We Holy Family.
No, client owes $2,000 totally.
But this is how Holy Family denotes.
Yeah, we Holy Family, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we put in owes $2,000. Then when we get to the pledge screen, I'll put in, I'm committing to 500, but the client needs to come up with $1,000. That's their share. So that when I do the verification, I check, this is what you owe is 2,000, okay? This is what I committed to, this is your share. Hopefully you got the other 500 from somebody else, friends, family, whatever, or else we're not gonna be paying our share.
Right.
I mean, that's just the way it
So those are
goes.
2 different ways.
Yep,
Of doing it.
yep.
That's good. It's nice to know there's options.
You could do, whatever you like to do there. Okay, we're gonna go, any other questions on check approval before we go to check register? That's where the fun stuff is.
I don't have anything in the chat.
Okay, we're gonna move to check register. Okay. We're gonna spend a lot of time here because there's a lot here to talk about, especially if you're not familiar with the check register. So first, I want to give you a guided tour of the check register. And so you become familiar with it and how it's laid out. And then we'll get into specifically the functions that you can do here, the options that you have. So first, let's go here. This is the current month. And like I said, this is the test system. So the data is very old. So it's 2020, if we can remember that far back. So the current month is April 2020. And you see, this is your register. If you clicked on the other tab, other months, this would represent all the other closed months, plus any other month that might be open. In this case, November 2022 is open. I'm going to tell you why it is in a minute when we get to backdating checks, okay? But if you looked at this, March is closed. And March rolled over to April, if you will. And we have a November register that's open. And you might ask, why do we have that? Because the transactions that we posted got posted with today's date. And keep that in mind as we talk about some scenarios later on, okay? So that's the two. So you might have, and it's very possible, that at the end of the month, and this is the end of the month in November, that you're going to have November open and you're going to have December open. December is going to appear like as an open month here because the treasurer hasn't closed November yet. The treasurer usually closes like the first 10 days of the new month, but that didn't stop business rolling on. We're still posting transactions December 1st, December 3rd, December 5th. So you say, well, where do they go? Well, simple. If you went to other months, you would see December here and you would click on it and you would see those transactions. So those are the 2 tabs, okay? Then let's come down here. There's really 3 columns to get focused on. One is your bank statement. Your beginning balance is your ending balance from last month, okay? We cleared, did I clear a 250 here? I guess maybe I didn't do a recalculate. There you go. I want, ooh, that would have been.
Can you
good.
highlight that little function?
That would, yeah, I'm going to show that one in a minute. This is your friend right here, recalculate. I'm going to tell you why when we get there. But anyway, beginning balance is 28,458.85. That's your ending balance from last month. Is also your ending balance right now until you start clearing transactions. When you start clearing credits and debits, this ending balance will get adjusted and hopefully it will equal to your bank statement. So this is the column that's the number that you balance back to your bank statement at the end of the month. If that doesn't balance, you don't go anywhere. It's got to come right to the penny. Okay, so this column here is your check register. This showing you in this register right here, this is the total deposits that you have, total checks that you have, and this is your registered balance. And you arrive at that by taking your ending balance plus your outstanding deposits minus your checks equal your registered balance. Okay? The third column is your pledges. And again, for those that use pledges, this is your outstanding exposure, if you will, in pledges, because those pledges are sometime are going to turn into checks. So the beauty about pledges, and we've heard good things and bad things about them. The bad thing is that it's an extra step for the caseworker. Right. But it is absolutely a great tool for the treasurer, because the treasurer can look at it and say, okay, if they didn't do pledges, I got $24,150 in my register. Well, not so fast, because you got 21, 22 in pledges. So really what you have to disperse is 22,028. Now, all those pledges are not going to happen, not 100%, and they're certainly not going to happen on the same day. But it's a nice thing for the treasurers to know, really, what do I have outstanding that I can, so when they get to the check approval screen, if they're running short, they could say, you know, I need to reduce this amount from 250 to 150 because we have a lot of outstanding pledges out there and 90% of them are going to happen and we can't afford to go over. So this is a great tool for a treasurer. You get some bad reviews from the caseworker because of it, because it is an extra step of turning a pledge into a check request. Okay, so that's this column here. So now we're going to go into the body of the register itself and look around. So let's see, right at the top. So the first column is the C column. When you start clearing transactions, you'll see check marks there. Here's your type column, and you'll see, you know, the type, whether it was housing or temporary lodging, whatever. Now, any one of these columns you could click on and you can sort. So if you wanted to see all your utilities, you can see all your utilities together, all your transportation, all your housing, whatever. If you want to sort it by check number, you can sort it by check number. If you want to sort it by client name, and this helps a lot when you get calls and it's about a client, you know, or it could be about the payee itself. Marietta Power didn't receive the check or whatever. You can go there and look at all Marietta Power. Now, there's one other little hidden jewel here that I'll bet even Kay Harris doesn't know about. Now I'm going to challenge
She's
her.
laughing.
Well, she knows because I taught it last year and I showed it. It is a filter. It's called the filter, but basically it's a search. You can search. So if you're looking for check number 12322, will pop right up. If you're looking for Marietta Power, you're going to get all Marietta Powers coming up. If you're looking for a specific client, there you go. So it's really nice to search within your register. It's kind of hidden way down here, and that's why treasurers kind of blow by it. But there are times when you get asked questions about a specific check number, about a client that's in the check register, and you could easily get to it by doing a search than just doing this or sorting it or whatever you decide to do. Okay. So in this check register, keep in mind, the current month is April. So we have some carryovers from March. That means these checks have not cleared the bank yet. They're just moving from month to month. And then we have some checks for the current month of April. Okay. So that's the check register, the body of the check register. So now we're going to go up here and talk about these buttons, the options that you have. At any time, you can print the check register. It's just a PDF. And there's your check register balance right here. So you get focused on it. Okay. You can print your pledge details. So if you do use pledges, you see the balance of 21, 22. You might ask, what is that? What's that made up of? There you go. That's what makes up that amount.
I have a question. Would there be any reason why a treasurer would want to print that report and share it like at a conference meeting or any other venue like that?
They can, but keep in mind, all we're printing right now is the register. It's not, at this point in time, it's not the published report. I think what they probably want to share and show you later on is the actual published report, the monthly financial public. This is a point in time.
The reason I'm asking is because it shares first and last client name.
Mhm.
So confidentiality is really, you know, I would say it's a sensitive document. If you don't want to circulate it, you don't want to photocopy it, you want to hand it out, you know, you want to maintain
Yeah,
some discretion with that.
yeah.
Jerry, I don't know if you have anything to
I've
add.
never seen a treasurer
For this,
print it and
Okay.
hand it out.
okay,
I mean,
Nor-
I've never really seen, it's more of the monthly report that they do, or they take the monthly report and customize it. But you're right,
I
because
just
you
wanna-
do want that confidentiality.
I just want to be sensitive to that because I don't know what your end of the month report's going to be.
Okay, and same thing, outstanding report, you get to see all the outstanding checks. I'm gonna save some time. I'm gonna hold this preview financial report to later on when we talk about the monthly financial report and we talk about solidarity. Don't press this button. It used to work. It doesn't anymore. I don't know why, but there's nothing behind it. So just ignore the man behind the curtain there. Okay, now we're gonna get into some of the meat here of added debits, added credits.
Will avoided check show up on this page is the question?
Yes, yes. You'll see when we void it, you will see the void in the type field for this check. If I decide to void that check, that will go away and void will show up, but we'll get there in a minute. So let's start with add debits, okay? You as a treasurer have the ability, besides all the requests that come to you from the caseworker, and as you're approving, they're getting posted to your register, right? Well, there are times when you have to add something directly into the register yourself, and you have to write a check. So let's talk about those. Okay, when do you use the add debit option? You never use it for client-related expenses. That's sort of a golden rule. So let's use examples of when do you use it. So if you click it, you'll see all the different types. One of them that you know and love is the solidarity contribution, right? You have to write a check, or the new way of doing it, Cheryl actually ACHs your bank account. So you need to put in the solidarity contribution, the suggested solidarity contribution that you get from your financial report, which I'll show you later on, into the check register. Because when Cheryl gets it, 20 days later, I think she does it on the 20th of the month, that's when she actually issues the ACH and she draws from your bank account. So that is one way. And by the way, when you get to the check number, I believe the correct format for ACH is ACH dash the month 2022. So Cheryl knows that this payment is for November 2022. Some conferences pay in the arrears. So it might be October 2022. So she just needs to know what you're paying. So that's one use of a debit transaction. What's some others? Purchase gift cards. So let's say that your treasurer, you go out and you buy $500 of gift cards from Kroger, from Publix, from Walmart, whatever. Okay, just a batch of them, 500. Well, you got to record, you're going to write a check for $500 to Kroger. You need to record that in your register because obviously it's going to appear on your statement. That's another use of using an add debit, is when you purchase gift cards.
So
Another-
put 20,
Pardon me?
20.
20 you wouldn't do.
Okay. You send a check to another conference?
You send a check to another conference?
Right, you're 20. When you write a check to another conference, how do you record it?
Ah, I think you do. I think you do write 22. Is that right?
Maybe at upper S, maybe at the bottom. Is there more at the bottom?
Yeah, it looks like there's more categories after special.
Well, there you go.
20, yeah,
where,
there you go.
where?
There's 20.
Oh, 20 in
Yep,
domestic.
yep, you got it.
Okay, Jerry asked a question. If you're twinning and let's say that the other conference really owns the case and they submitted the check for $1,000 and you're gonna reimburse them for $500 because you decide you're gonna split it.
Yeah,
So you need to send them a check for $500 and it goes to 20. The one that I wanted to point out was member reimbursement. So let's say that a member buys stamps, or you as a treasurer, you buy stamps when you send checks out. Okay, so that would probably be an operational expense. Okay, there. So if you bought some stamps and you wanted to get reimbursed for that, that's the way to do it. Obviously, you are the payee, but don't make this mistake. This is the fatal flaw. Let's say that a member or caseworker decides to pay the client's electric bill with their credit card. Okay? You do not enter that in as an ad debit because, as I said before, any ad debits will not update the client's record. So if I, as a caseworker, decide to use my credit card to pay for the client's electric bill, what needs to happen is the caseworker needs to submit a check request listing them as the vendor. Okay, and then it comes to the treasurer and treasurer approves it. And that way there, let's say that it was for $300 for the electric bill, it will then get posted to the client's record. The member will get reimbursed for it. And by the way, I believe the members always have to complete a reimbursement form first before you even apply for a reimbursement.
For a personal debit card.
Personal debit card, personal, you mean to buy, to use
You're
it?
saying you're paying as the Vincentian is paying, not the conference with the card. You're
Yeah.
using your.
for an
personal-
That's
operation,
right.
for an operational
That's right.
expense.
But I've seen many times where the way it gets recorded in CMS is an ad debit, and that's wrong. It's just wrong. And the reason why it's wrong is because it will never get on the client's record.
Mhm.
Yeah, your check register will be in balance, no doubt about it. But the client record will never show that you paid $300 for utilities.
Or temporary lodging, which is
That's
happening
what-
a lot.
And that's important. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Okay, I think we might have beaten that one to death. The other one, which is probably the other one most used, is an adjustment debit. So if you have pennies difference between your bank statement and your CMS check register, you might need to make a debit adjustment. In other words, the bank is saying that you have less than what you think you have, so you can make a debit adjustment. Ad credit is very similar. The one that's highly used is your deposits for church and poor box. That's one.
Here's a question for the previous function. If you put into notes what the operational expense was for, does that note show up somewhere?
Does that note show up?
Do the notes that you denote under,
No. No, but I'm trying to think. The reason why we put it in notes is for the auditors. That's the reason why we put it in notes. But I think they go back and they pull a specific check. I'll have to check where else it shows up. I think if you looked at any of the inquiries, I don't think it shows anywhere where the notes print out or get displayed. I'm gonna write that one down. Let me get back to you.
And what is the enabled tracking box for?
You don't want to know. This was a very weak attempt by Aguilar to do a donation tracking system, which we all have in our conferences. I'm not even going to click on it because I don't want to confuse you. Just stay away from it. It's very, very weak. You would have to list every deposit that you have, which is crazy. So let's just forget about that one. Okay. The other one is thrift store, might be another one that you would have a credit for. You know, when you get thrift store revenue coming in from the thrift store, you separate it from donations and poor box. That's another one. The one that is kind of hidden is memorials. So if you get memorials, the category goes into special events and other. You say, why? I don't know why they picked it there. But here's the real bad news. The bad news is that's subject to solidarity. Memorials is above the special events and other is above the line of 3C, which you'll see on your handout, which is the solidarity calculation. And that is subject to solidarity, your memorials. Okay. So I'm going to stop there before I
How
get.
much do people really use the memorials as opposed to just considering church donations?
Well, how do I want to say this? The ones that know that it's going to get taxed, put it in church, and well, it's going to get taxed in church donations either way. I mean, most people, I don't know. I'll ask the treasurers out there. How many of you knew that you post your memorials in special events? Do we have anybody
You
raising?
have to unmute yourself if you want to respond. Somebody's raising their hand. It says Stephen, but I know it's not Stephen.
It's Sydney, and yes, I knew.
Sydney.
I'm a new treasurer, but the previous treasurer told me that we had a memorial when I first started, so that's how I knew.
Ah, okay. And he told you where to post it?
Yes, I think. I mean, but I think
No,
we
that's
did.
okay. That's okay. It's one that, more than likely what Jerry said, people don't know it's special events, so they just put it in church and poor box. It's gonna get taxed anyway. The solidarity is gonna come out against it, so it really doesn't matter. Okay, so we're ready to move on to some other areas now. What we're gonna do is backdate some checks, okay? Now, under what condition does that normally occur? Well, normally it's right at the end of a month that it occurs where, let's say it's November 30th, which is tomorrow. And we roll into December 1st. And then transactions start getting posted. But let's say that the treasurer was on vacation when they got your request. I'm playing caseworker here, you're the treasurer, you were on vacation and you didn't get to it till December 2nd. But the event actually occurred in November. So what you want to do is backdate that check into the November register, because that's when the event occurred. It did not occur December 2nd. So how would you do that? Well, if you remember, we had two transactions that we posted and they went to today's date. And just think about if this said December 2nd, 2022, okay? If I want to backdate it, all I need to do is come here. Now, remember our register. Our register is April 2020, right? Okay. So if I wanted to go into the April 2020 register, I put in a date of April 2020. So if this was, that's the current month, and let's say that May is the new month, if you will. So I want to backdate it. So I just would update. And then if I go to the check register, hopefully I'll see it there.
Right there.
Right there.
Hello?
Yes,
So you can't backdate it to a month that's been closed though, right?
exactly right. I was just about ready to tell you, you can only
sorry.
backdate to open months. You might have 2 months open, you might have 3 months open, you might only have 1 month open. You can always backdate to an open month. You can never backdate to a closed month. That month is closed. It's already been reported on. You cannot do anything about it. Even if you have adjustments from a prior month, you have to put it in the current month. You cannot go back and open up a closed month.
So our policy is now we close the months by the 10th
Of the next month.
day of the next month. So there won't be many open months.
That's
There might be one. So you only have that opportunity to bring it into the prior month
Right.
theoretically. So my question then is, do you have to do anything? Does the caseworker have to do anything on closing the case to make sure that it gets included in
The right month.
the right month?
You mean from a statistics standpoint or from financial standpoint? What do you
Well,
mean?
for the monthly close.
No,
So it's the monthly close, the cases reported in a monthly close are based off of the checks that get written. Not the complete the case on this particular date.
and again, it all depends what you're asking me. If you're talking about the financial piece of it, the caseworker is out of the picture. The check has already been requested, the check has already been paid. The treasurer is the only one that gets to decide whether it goes into the current month or goes into the next month.
Right, but
That's the end of it.
understand, for the monthly report, it not only has financials, but it has how many people we helped, how many households
That's
we
what I said,
helped.
I'm separating statistics from financial. You're right. The caseworker, when they close that case, which could be in December, okay? They're gonna get reported, we're getting into the weeds here.
Yeah,
That will get reported as a statistic of number of people helped in December, not in November.
even though we wrote the check in
You-
November.
That's right. It's not based upon pay date. The statistics are not based upon the check pay date.
There's overlap.
Well,
So
there
you're
is,
helping in one
there
month and
is
paying
a
another.
misalignment, but
Yeah.
that's something we could talk about
Yeah.
amongst us chickens.
Okay, so that's backdating. That's backdating a check, okay? So we're gonna go into changing check amounts.
It's 1:03, just time check.
I know, well, I'm way over my time here. So changing a check amount, when do you want to do that? Let's talk about a couple of situations. The most obvious one, or the classic, is because we're paying a lot online, we're paying Marietta, we'll say Marietta Power online. The check request comes through for $200 to pay Marietta Power. The treasurer gets it, they get online to Marietta Power's website. They're paying $200 for the client's bill, and they get charged $3.75 for fees. So really, you pay $203.75. So that's when a treasurer would go in, and by the way, you can only do that once again in a current month. Okay? So that's when you would go in and you would change that check amount, that debit, to something new, because obviously you want it to be the same that's on the bank statement. And if you only put in 200, it's not going to reconcile. So that's the obvious, and we're seeing more and more of that because more treasurers are paying bills electronically, and you got fees associated with that.
And the fees are being recorded.
Yeah, interesting that it gets recorded as assistance as
You know-
opposed to as an operational expense.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an extra step.
Well, you could record it as an operational expense. The problem is you're not going to tie back to your statement.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I
I mean, I would, this is the way we handle it, most treasurers do, because they want to tick and tie the statement with their register. And,
Yeah.
and so you can do what you, yeah, once again, you can make the check register balance any way that you want it to balance.
Yeah,
But then if you want it to be, if you want things to be reflected correctly, that's the way you do it.
Well, I guess the important thing is if half of our conferences are doing it one way and half are doing it the other, it's being recorded as assistance in 50% of them. So it's just something for us to
yeah.
look into.
No, you're right.
Okay, so that's one situation. The other situation is, and this is an oddball, but it does happen.
It's a
And-
great day
Pardon
for
me?
the account holder.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, here's the situation. Let's say that you wrote a check for $200.55. And the check cleared for $200.35. Now, let's say you wrote the check in the current month, you mailed it in the current month, and it cleared in the current month. Okay? And once again, if you want to be fairly anal treasurer, what you can do is go change the check amount to be $255, $255. And so that way there, it is the same, oh no, 235, I'm sorry, $200.35. So that is the same, no, it cleared for $255, you clear for $255, you put in $255. Or you could put through the adjustment, which Jerry talked about before. Once again, that won't tie back to your statement. You can change the amount to equal to what's going to be on your statement. But once again, it needs to be in the current month. You can't do that for anything else. Okay, so that's that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to void some checks out. Okay, or void a check. And let's just pick one. By the way, you can void a prior month check, or better known as carryovers, or you can void checks in the current month. There's no restriction there. Okay. So we'll just pick a check and we're going to void this one out right here. So we're given the opportunity to void a check. So what are some situations that create voids? A return check, right, from a vendor. So the check just came back from the vendor, let's say that was leasing office, they sent it back to you because the client was not able to raise their share of the rent and they got evicted and they sent it back to you. God bless you if you get a check back from a leasing office. I have yet to seen it. But anyway, if you do get it, you could just void it out. It's pretty simple. You just call up the check and you void it out. But you have to give a void reason, okay? Because check was returned. Okay, now, who asked the question before? I told you that that type would get replaced with
Judy.
void. And you see that it's marked as being reconciled. Now you can unvoid it or undo the void. Now, as you know, when you void a check, it puts money back into your register, right? So now you have more money. Oh, by the way, what do I want to do? Let me go back here. Because this is a good time to talk about this recalculate button. I can't tell you when, I can't tell you how, but there are times you might do some things operationally and it doesn't really update this balance. What you always want to do is press the recalculate button just to make sure. In that case, with the void, obviously, we wanted to make sure it put money back into our checking account because we voided the check. And now if we click on it, we can undo the void. Sure if it changed the balance or not, probably didn't. Let's see, 24,150. There you go. That's the reason why you always press the recalculate button. Don't ask me why, don't ask me how, but my advice to you is when in doubt, press the recalculate button. If you're saying that number doesn't look right, especially when you get to the end of the month, the first thing you should do is do a recalculate before you start closing the month. That's the very first thing you should do.
I have a question.
Yes,
Uh, Yes, if you have some, if I wrote a check for rent and it was 3 months ago and it keeps carrying over, they've never cashed it. At what point do you just void it out of your account, or what do we do in that case?
well, that's usually up to you. I'll tell you about a strange situation. What if you void it and then all of a sudden it shows up?
Yes.
And that's the real hard one. You get to pick when you think a reasonable time has elapsed. We usually wait about 3 months. If we figure it either got lost or it's sitting in somebody's desk or who knows what happened to it, and we just void it out. But there is a situation when you void it, and then 2 months later, there it appears on your statement. What do you do then?
Right.
Well, what you do is you go back in, you have the caseworker resubmit the check request. Okay? When it comes to you, for the check number, once again, the use of the suffix at the end of the check number. So let's say that check that just cleared is 2,000. So you would put in 2000-A. Now, of course, you wouldn't write a check, right?
Right.
But you want to make sure that it gets posted to that client's account because you voided it out. So on the client's record, it says void. It's as if it never happened. But that's not truly what happened. The vendor actually cashed it, and you got to somehow then get that $2,000 or whatever it is on the client's record. So you got to go back through, reopen that case, resubmit the check request, treasurer gets it, and the approval screen puts in the check number with a suffix. And again, the check number is the check number that appeared on the statement. And that'd be good enough. And that way there, everything's in balance now. That's the hard one, is when the check appears a couple of months later.
Although the way to counteract that is you basically can officially void a check with your bank. You could basically say void this check, there might be a service fee. So if it's large enough, sometimes you just go to the bank and you notify them that you want this check voided, so that you don't have to worry about it showing up.
And do it in CMS and then actually call the bank to stop the check.
Right.
You could, I don't know if they, that's the way you handle it.
We do that at St. Jude.
That's the way you handle it in CMS. So really, there's no rule of how long do you wait? It's totally up to you. We just set an arbitrary limit of 3 months. That's what our treasurer waits. If they're outstanding, we just go ahead and void it.
Yeah.
We figured it just got lost. Okay, so now I'm going to move into the next section, and we're going to talk about the financial report and solidarity calculation. So let's go to the financial report. By the way, you should have gotten a handout in the solidarity calculation. You can see what items are subject to solidarity on the financial report. They're all the way through 3C. Everything above the line is subject to solidarity. Everything below that line is not subject to solidarity. And your solidarity is based upon your prior year's revenue. So you're either going to pay 7.5% or you're going to pay 10%, depending upon last year's revenue.
Year or month?
Year.
Year.
It's right here. When you do a preview financial report, you're going to get what the suggested solidarity amount is. So you're going to go and write the add debit. You're going to do an add debit for $863.60. You're going to put an ACH dash, whatever it was, 11/20/22. But here is the explanation of what your revenue was and why you're paying that percent. Okay, anything greater than $50,000, I think it was, you're paying 7.5%. Anything over that amount, you're going to be paying 10%. Okay. So this is the monthly financial report. You could do a preview anytime during the month. If you want, you can print it, you can look at it. But of course, when you close the month, you'll get the published financial report. And that published financial report will not have the solidarity calculation on it. It should, it doesn't. So I just want to say that up front. So it's a pretty straightforward report from a treasurer standpoint. If all you're responsible for is to look at the numbers and not the statistics, it's pretty straightforward. This is all your receipts, everything, all the activity that came in by line number. Like I said, 3C and above are all subject to solidarity. Everything below that line is not. Okay. Here's your expenses. And we break out the rent versus everything else because National asked us to do that. But in reality, you still paid 85, 81, 66 for expenses. So the other place that treasurers tend to go is to look at the direct aid that makes up that 85, 81. We at Holy Family get focused on temporary lodging. The reason we run this report quite a bit during the month because we set a budget. We're only going to spend 10% of our revenue, of our receipts on temporary lodging. And then we shut it off from that point on during the month. So that's the way that we kind of use this. But if you want to see the breakdown of those expenses, this is the breakdown. Now, if you're into statistics as well as the numbers, this is the visits and services to people. As I explained to Jerry, this number gets incremented when the case is closed. This number gets incremented based on the visit date. Those could be two different things. The visit date could have been November. The case got closed in December. Okay. And then here's your in-kind services and goods. And depending upon what was entered in the system by your caseworkers or through express assistance, this is all your in-kind in terms of dollars and number of times. This is your membership report. This is exactly like your annual report. It's just on a monthly basis. Your direct aid, your vouchers broken out, gift cards and vouchers, and you can see all the statistics. So it all depends, what you're interested in. It has everything for anybody, but typically, treasurers are really focused on the numbers. You need to make sure that that number is correct all the time. Okay. So that is that. So we're going to do a close. We're going to do a close pretty fast here. So we're about ready to close the month. We think everything looks good at this time. We haven't cleared any checks yet. So you see this button right here. It says close April. We're going to close the current month, April. So this could be May the 5th, May the 10th, May whatever. We're about ready to close the month. Everything's in the register that needs to be in the register. First thing we do is lock the register. Most of our conferences have multiple treasurers. One thing we don't want is a treasurer closing the month, and another treasurer adding transactions to the register. It's going to lock them out. So if you have multiple treasurers, it will lock the other treasurers out when you're doing the close. Let me go back one. I forgot to write that. I forgot to do a cut and paste here. Because you're going to ask me to do that eventually. Okay. And oh, by the way, you can always resume. So if you were in the middle of a close and you got called away or you just didn't have enough time, you come back to later on, you could just click resume.
Well, I guess you could start a close, walk away, and then everybody gets locked out.
That's right.
Become a popular treasurer.
Very popular. Okay. So we're going to clear some transactions here. I'm just randomly going to pick some. Let's clear a credit too. And another. Now, this is a data entry field. New treasurers tend to blow by this because it isn't really that obvious, but what you're being asked is, what are you reading on your bank statement? What does it say as your final ending balance? Forget about what CMS says. What we want to know is, what does your statement say? Now, I just did a cut and paste. I'm assuming there one, well, actually, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to clear some transactions. By the way, you can reconcile anytime during the month. Not what I wanted to do here. Let me go back. Excuse me. Okay. Let's do a recalculate. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you. So let's get focused on this column right here, the bank statement. The beginning balance plus the deposits minus the withdrawals that we cleared. The bank ending statement that you're looking at should say 34,189.85. That's the one that I'm going to cut and paste or copy and paste. Okay, so if you're looking at your bank statement and it doesn't say that, you need to stop, because you either cleared a transaction that you weren't supposed to clear, or you did not clear a transaction that you were supposed to clear, or you have to make adjustments, or who knows what. But do not go any further if that balance does not equal to the one that you're seeing on the statement. Okay, now we're ready to start to close. It's asking me for, what do you see in terms of the bank statement, the fiscal bank statement? I just did a copy and paste. I'm saying, listen, I'm seeing the same amount that was in the register. Okay, so this is the wizard. You just kind of like go through, it'll lead you step by step. Everything is in balance here, you can tell, or else the system would stop you at this time. You can print your PDF if you want, your check register, your outstanding report, if you want to do it. Most treasurers do not. They wait until the published reports, and then those are the ones that they send up the chain. They don't really print at this time, but you can if you want to. You just keep moving through. See your check register balance and your financial, they're in balance with each other. Once again, if you weren't, it would stop you. You know, there was a time, and I go back to CMS for 10 years, there was a time you could be out of balance, CMS would let you continue. I could almost tell you that it's almost impossible for you to be out of balance and let CMS and for you to continue the close. It's almost impossible. I'm sure there's a situation out there, very seldom you see. And once again, you can print your reports at any stage here, but I'm going to show you your published reports in a minute. We're going to close the month. It's that simple. And your reports are all going to get published. I'm going to go show you how you find them. So you could send them off. And I think the chain is, Jerry, it goes from the conference treasurer to the president, to the conference, to district treasurer, to the council office.
Yeah.
That's the approval process, right?
Right, although at this point in time, we don't need paperwork to come to the
No.
council.
I'm just saying
But
that.
yeah, it's the treasurer then reviews it with the president, who then sends it on to the district treasurer, who then consolidates all the conferences together
And sends them up.
and sends them up, or basically says, we're good. Because the truth is, once they close, it's already posted, and we have access to it. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so where do you find those published reports that you would send to the next
Or make
level up?
available.
Right there. Okay, so, well, let's go back to check register. We rolled the months. The current month is May now, right? So when we close, May now becomes the current month. And of course, we still have March and April's transactions there. You can see the beginning balance and the ending balance being the same. That's exactly what it was. So now you're ready to start the new month. But you got to go back and you got to go send your reports up. So here's April. Here's all your reports. Okay, so that's your monthly financial report. It's a PDF. You download it, you put it into an email and send it. Here's your check register. Once again, download it. And by the way, just look at the check register balance. They should all be the same. I can't read that. It says 23,900 something.
And 39 cents.
Okay, if you go to the outstanding, you should see the same. And if you go to the check register, you should see the same right there. That's one way visually of knowing that everything is right. So you can download these to your computer, create an email and send it off to your president. Month is done. Okay, it's history.
Where do you access that again?
You go
To,
over to financial reports here.
Mhm.
And then here they are. I'm not going to get into these two tabs. Here's all your published reports. These are a
Yeah.
result of the close.
right. And you click on one of those.
You click on one and
And then you can see check register report.
that comes,
and
yeah, you just
that.
kind of click on here. It's kind of screwy, but it works. Okay, the other thing I want to show you, and I know we're banging right up against the time limit, and I don't want to mess with the World Cup in any way, but I will. The other responsibility you have is to upload your bank statements. Okay, Cheryl requires each and every month that you upload your statement. So how do you do that? You go over to My Conference, you go to Documentation, you go to Bank Statements, you add a document, you choose a file. I don't know what's out here. Is there a PDF that I can upload?
Maybe. It'll just be whatever documents, the treasury fact.
Oh, we'll do
FAQ.
solidarity calculation.
Mhm.
Pretend that's a bank statement, if you will. And then usually I think they put in bank statement. I mean, you can make it up whatever you want. And then November. That's the statement, right? And then you do an upload.
And you would see your bank statement.
You would see your bank statement. And so if you went back, there's your bank statement for November. There's another way that now that's only reserved for treasurers can do that. If you need to have a treasurer role in order to do that. But if you don't have a treasurer role and you want your conference to see them, Jerry, I think you might have asked it. If you go to the documents button, you go to conference reports, you could then see all the conference reports that are visible to all the conference members. They could always see it. The MFR. Okay, so that's a way for all conference members to see it. I know at our conference meetings, once a month, our treasurer will hand them out. You know, we'll go over the financials and that sort of thing. So if you didn't want to work with paper, all you got to do is tell your conference members, just go to documents and they can review the conference report anytime. Okay, I want to show you one trick that some treasurers, and again, I'm going to challenge Kay, she may or may not even use it, but they're in search. If you need to search a check, and let's say that it was 12301, you got an inquiry from a vendor or whatever for check number 12301, you did a search, you can bring it up and you'll know exactly who, and then you can review the case, whatever. That's one way you can use check request. The other way you can use it, I wrote down some examples here. I'm sure I can't find them. You can use it for, let's clear it. Let's say it's a vendor and it's Marietta Power, or let's say it's White Columns. but I don't know how to spell columns or, which is possible. I'm not sure what comes after white. I can use what's called a wild card by putting in.
Richland, GA.
That's Nancy. Sorry, she's not.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. I can just see it.
Okay,
Thank you.
you can put in a percent sign and then do a search. I'll give you everything white plus. So if you're looking for a specific vendor, you can do that. Okay, it's pretty neat. And I don't think the search is used very much. Kay, are you out there? Do you use this?
Unmute yourself, Kay.
Who remembers that?
Huh?
That's
Besides
old
you.
school.
Me?
I
Besides you,
remember that.
John.
Well,
I remember that. You
well,
never had any of it, Gil.
well,
Yes,
I'll tell you
yes, I
what.
use.
How do you use it, Kay?
I go to the search and put like you did, wild card, and then click it.
Okay, I know, but what's the business reason of why you use it? What drives you there?
Let me see why
Because John told.
Are
me.
you searching
No,
for a
no.
client's name or a vendor's name or?
Usually it's a check number, and it's a check that might have been issued 2 months ago.
Okay.
You know, that's the most possible scenario. Or you can put in the client's name if you wanted to. You could put in, you know, whatever her name was, King, Mary
Gotcha.
Jo King. And you can bring up all Mary Jo King's checks if you wanted to. I mean, that's one way to do it. But typically what I've seen is that when the treasurer gets an inquiry for a check that might have been, you know, that outstanding check for 3 months, that you go in there and just put in the check number and it'll bring it right up. Yeah, that's the way to use it, but it's up to you. I'm at 1:31. I'll take questions at this time.
And if you have a question, you can unmute yourself.
Can I ask a question?
You can ask
Unmute
the
yourself.
Unmute yourself. Ding, ding, ding.
All right, so I used to get a lot of questions because there are a lot of conferences that are doing special works. So what is the treasurer's treatment for expenses associated with special works?
Recording the income or the expense?
No,
The expense,
Okay.
so you know, like,
I
you
have
know,
the same
they'll
question
do,
about income.
they'll do, you know, well, I guess special works, that's a special event, would be the income part of it. But special works, like, you know, making sandwiches or putting together, you know, some kind of welcome basket outside of the holiday program. But just if, you know, there are a lot of conferences that have decided to do special works, and they're just, I get questions like, what's the best way to report on it? So that I can always go back and say, here's what we spent money on in special works, helping individuals. So
Tag it.
special work, now
Tag
the
it.
only challenge there is that you have no way of tying it to how many people you helped. Like if I did a special works and I did a soup kitchen, just say, you know, we did a ad hoc soup kitchen, we helped 100 people, we served 100 people.
but again,
You
it's
would
not
put
gonna
it
be-
in notes.
you Put it in notes.
Yeah.
Now, again, and it was a good question. I'll tell you, I'm struggling to figure out where notes actually appears after this,
Great question.
after the entry.
What about?
Because other than, excuse me, Jeff, other than, the reason why notes is important, especially on voids, is because auditors want to know why you
Yeah.
voided a check. So yeah, you put it there, but I'm not sure where else you would go back and
So
see
you would
that.
have to keep track of it. So at the end of the year, when you do the annual report and you're allowed to edit the people you've served, right?
Yes,
You can
Through the
then
annual
do it
report.
there, but you're gonna have to keep a side tabulation.
number of people
Could you
that,
not have a suffix, for instance, the check number /120 PPL for that event, and then you would be able to
Could.
see
you
it,
could,
like that could be your suffix.
Very good
for
idea.
people
very,
help.
very good idea. Yeah, you could make it up
Versus a note,
versus no.
Well, for something like this, it
because
just.
you're talking about like a one-off.
Well, again, there's quite a few conferences that say, hey, look, I do special works, but I really want to note, you know, all the people I've served, right? So I need to, number one, because I tell them, well, you have to do it in the expense, right? You have to do it in the debit transaction for all the money that you spent
Sure.
on that special works. But then they want to tie it to, hey, I served so many people. And we'd love for them to tie it to, because at the end of the year, right, we would love for them to say, hey, I had 8 special works programs
Serve
throughout
an
the
extra
year.
1,000
And I
people.
served, you
Yeah.
know, several hundred families or individuals.
Well, for anybody who's been through my annual report training, I teach everybody that you keep a special works spreadsheet because we all have it. We have backpack programs, we have summer lunch programs, we have kitchen programs, we have holiday programs, we have them all. What we try to do is to keep a spreadsheet so that when we get to the end, we don't have to search through CMS and everything else. We know that we help X amount of people with this, so that all you got to do is, like Jerry said, is when you go to the annual report, you just adjust those numbers.
So we should
accordingly.
probably document something like that in the treasurer's handbook. And put a template
Yep,
in an appendix
Yep.
in the treasurer's handbook to say for, because it'd probably be either the treasurer or the president, somebody, and there could be a coordinator of special works.
Yep.
Who should be, you know, I guess, I know there's always, hey, you could do it several different ways, you could do however you want to do it, but the truth is, you should probably say, here's our recommendation from the conference support center. Here's our recommendation on how things should be done.
Mhm.
And I'm just thinking through that because again, you know, and you can point to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you do it along the way as the event occurs, it is so much easier
Oh,
when you
yeah.
when you get to the very end, of the annual report, when you have to put in all those numbers. But if you wait to the very end, then you're sitting there scratching your head going, yeah, we did a backpack program. How many people did we help?
Right,
You know, and then you're making it up.
right. No,
So
exactly.
all you need is a special works spreadsheet template
Yeah,
that you use, and you just kind of like record it as you go along the way, and then you just pull it out at the very end.
gotcha.
But that's what I recommend. I always recommend that when I do the annual report, that you keep that for next year, because obviously this year is gone. Okay, so that's what, any other questions we have out there? Well, I thank you for your time. We're 7 minutes over the allotted time. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, once again, you could send them through the chat, or you could just send Jennifer an email, or you can submit a support ticket as a question and I'll answer it. I know there's a couple here that I need to get back on.
And I have notes too. We can.
Okay,
we'll
great.
share.
Okay, so everybody have a great day.
And you'll get an email for your attendance today, to a survey, a brief survey for you, just to log that you attended. So please look for that to come in the next couple of days.
Take care. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we want to
Stop share. And then you can end. Voila.